Boys and girls, I'm making you go back and review because it's been several days since we did this. So in exponential form, just tell me what to write. 100 equals 1,000 equals 10,000 equals, and 1,000,000 equals. I think we usually have this a little bigger. Is that better? Okay, take a look at these. This is a review of metric measurements. We talked last week about the numbers we use to convert these, and there's kind of a trick. Everything is 1,000 except for one measurement in 5th grade, and that is centimeter. So if you didn't fill those in on Thursday, I think, when we did this, go ahead and fill those in now. All right. And Mrs. Ray, you can pause this whenever you need to so students can write it on their papers. Okay, so we're going to talk about metric, units of measurement, and we're going to start with length. So on length we will use the meter, and we can relate them to our place value chart. However, it does get a little bit confusing. So I will probably give you a trick. You know me well enough by now to know you'll get a trick. So let's start out by labeling this chart. Now, one block, I believe, got this labeled, but I think we did it incorrectly. So hopefully you can just erase a little bit and fix what we did incorrectly last week. So the base unit of measurement, and we're talking about length right now, is 1 meter. And 1 meter, if I change that to 1,000 meters, who remembers the prefix that goes along with 1,000? I'm going to skip ahead on the page just real quickly. We talked about this last week in some of the classes, but here are all the prefixes. The only ones we're going to use in 5th grade are centi, milli. The base unit is just the word, like meter, gram, liter, and then kilo. And kilo means 1,000. And we have kilometer or kilometer, is how a lot of people say it. Kilogram, kiloliter, I don't hear much. But you're smart enough, you could probably figure that out if you know that kilo means 1,000. So my base unit will be in the ones place, and my kilo will be in the thousands place. Then if I look at centi, we've got hundredths, and milli, we have thousands. We don't really use centigram or centiliter, but again, I think you could figure it out because centi means 100. So let's take a look at this. So if I have 1,000 meters, that's called 1 kilometer. And if I have 1/100th of a meter, who remembers what that's called? Centi means 100. And if I have 1,000th of a meter, we call that millimeter. Now, how would I write these as in decimal form? Well, let's start with 1/100th of a meter. How would I write that in decimal form? Well, you already know how to write 100th. Pretty simple. How would I write 1,000th of a meter in decimal form. Okay, so that's pretty much the place value chart that we're going to use this year in 5th grade when we're talking about metric measurements. Okay, so let's take a look at problem 1, and you should have this on your sheet. And it says, how many centimeters is equal to 2 meters? Well, first of all, let's label this number line. I'm going to label my end points. Now the 0 and 2 and 1 is in the middle. Now, if I were talking centimeters, and you're going to picture a meter stick in your head right now, that has 100 centimeters. So I would, and you don't have to write this, but we've got 100 centimeters here and 100 centimeters here. So tell me a multiplication sentence that I could use with a 2 in it to figure out the answer to this. If I know there are 100 centimeters in a meter, I can simply multiply 100 times 2. Now how could I write the same thing, but instead of using 100, I'll use the exponent. So this is exponential form. 2 times 10 to the, how many zeros? Second equals 200. So how many centimeters equal 2 meters? 200 centimeters. Okay, so let's take a look at this. We're going to put it on a chart. And it says to use a meter strip, but we're not going to do it because we can do this in our head. We're really good. We have the decimal trick. So if I'm going from meters to millimeters, my units of measurement are getting larger or smaller. My units of measurement are getting smaller. However, there are more millimeters than there are centimeters, and there are more centimeters than there are meters. So when I'm going from meters to millimeters, I have to multiply. So the first thing I want you to do is we're going to write a little cheat sheet here. Meters to centimeters, multiply by 10 to the second. Okay? Meters to millimeters, multiply by, what do you think, 1,000, 10 to the third. So we're going to try that. First thing I want to do is go ahead and go back to the 2 meters that we had on problem 1. And let's write 2 meters in the first box. And in the second box, we're going to multiply by what, boys and girls? 10 to the second. So 2 times 100 equals 200. And then for the third box, we're going to multiply by 10 to the third because we're going from meters to millimeters. So 2 times 1,000 equals 2,000. Pretty simple when we have all those zeros on the end. But what if we don't? If we don't have the zeros on the end, we have to use the trick that I just had you write down, plus the decimal trick. So let's get the decimal trick written down right now so it can be in our minds. All right, so let's take 1 37/100 of a meter. And let's put that on here. 1 37/100. And when I'm going from meters to centimeters, what do I multiply by? 10 to the second. So if I multiply 10 to the second, which is 100, which way does my decimal move, boys and girls? To the right. How many place values? 2. My exponent tells me how many place values. So the answer to how many centimeters are in 1 37/100 meters is 137. That's basically all we're doing today. We just have to multiply and divide and move the decimal. But we have a reason for doing it today because we're using measurement. So let's go on and let's go ahead and figure out how many millimeters are in 1 37/100 meters. So going back to the number, I can just rewrite it down here. I have room, you probably have room. And I'm going to multiply, because when I go from meters to millimeters, multiply by 10 to the third. So times 1,000. How many decimal place values? 3. So here we go. 1, 2, 3. You know how I kind of make that decimal larger to show me where it ended up? So I have 1370. And how do you say that number, boys and girls? 1,370. Okay, let's take a look at problem 2. And this is, if you'll notice, it's going from small units of measurement to a larger unit of measurement. However, even though these are smaller, and on the place value chart we put millimeters in the thousandths place, we're going to have to do a different operation than we think to get to meters. So, let's take a look at it. If I go from millimeters to meters, that's the opposite of what we did on the last page. What do you think I'm going to do? Divide by, hey, let's start with centimeters so we have those the same on both charts, because these are sort of our little cheat sheets. So centimeters to meters, I'm going to divide by, centi means what, boys and girls? 100, so it's 10 to the second power. If I go from millimeters to meters, and this is also called renaming. You might see this called renaming. I'm going to divide by, milli means what? 1,000. So I'll divide by 10 to the third. So let's start with the 2 meters. If I have 2,000 millimeters, and I want to figure out how many meters it is, I'm going to divide by what, boys and girls? 1,000. So my problem would look like this. 2,000 divided by 10 to the third. Well, 10 to the third has how many zeros? And so will I use a decimal trick on this one? No, I'm going to use a zero trick. So how many zeros can I cross off on 2,000? So from 2,000 millimeters, it becomes 2 meters. And I'm pretty sure that's what it said on the last page also. We had 2 meters here, and it was 2,000 millimeters. So now, if I take centimeters, we all know it's 200. Pretty much have that memorized by now. And I divide 200 by 100, what trick will I use? How many zeros will I cross off? And again, we get 2 meters. Okay, so let's try that with a different number this time. I'm going to put one up there we haven't done yet. Let's try it with 2,600 millimeters. So if I have 2,600 millimeters, how can I figure out how many meters I have? Well, if I go from millimeters and rename to meters, divide by 10 to the third, which is what number? 1,000. Can I use the zero trick? No, I can't, because I don't have enough zeros on 2,600. So what trick will I use? Decimal trick. I'm dividing by 1,000. Where does my decimal start out? The end of the number. And how many place values will I move it? 3. I'm going to make that one bigger so I know where my decimal goes. So I can have 2,600 meters. But What can I get rid of, boys and girls? Because they're trailing. That's right, the zeros. Okay, so let's try that. Let's figure out what it would be if we had 260 centimeters. Let's see what that problem would look like. So 260 centimeters. And I'm going from centimeters to meters, so I divide by 10 to the second, which is what number? 100. Can I use a zero trick? No, because I don't have enough zeros. So, decimal, at the end of the number, how many place values? To the left. So I end up with 2 and 60 hundredths. But what can I get rid of because it doesn't change the value? That's correct. Okay, this is when it gets really fun. You know, I put that number line there, but I don't think we're going to use it. I just want to use those little tricks that we talked about earlier. So, on this one, I want you to highlight meters, draw an arrow, and then highlight centimeters. And you know me, I'm too lazy to get my highlighter out. So, I'm just going to put a box around it with my pen. Now, I'm renaming from meters to centimeters. So look back on your chart. When we go meters to centimeters, what do? Multiply by 10 to the second. So this is quite simple. I'm going to take 4 and 5/10 times, what number is 10 to the second power? And what trick will I use, boys and girls? Decimal. We have so many tricks, but I think we can remember them. Okay, so how many place values? Which way? Very good. So remember, my last zero that I put on there, I like it to be larger so that I make sure I get the zero in the, or the decimal in the right place when I write the number. So my answer to this problem is 450 centimeters. If I wanted to answer in a sentence, I could say the ribbon would measure 450 centimeters. Okay, let's take a look at this one. Now, we're going to highlight millimeters, draw an arrow, to meters. We're renaming from millimeters to meters. So, look back at your chart. Millimeters to meters. I will divide by 10 to the third power. Okay, so 67 millimeters divided by what number is 10 to the third? Decimal is at the end of the number. And how many place values will I move? Which way? Fill in with a 0. So my answer is 0.67, and the label is meters. We went from millimeters to meters. So how do you say that answer, boys and girls? Start with 60. 67 meters. Oh, 67 thousandths meters.